Today we're going to be talking about a sad missing children's case that has so many of us scratching our head and giving the side eye to the parents that are involved in it. December 21st, 2020, so just this last December, two brothers went missing. Now the brothers' names were Orrin and Orson West. They were only 3 and 4 years old, so they were tiny little babies. Now as of this recording, they've yet to be found. Now this took place in California City, California. Trezell and Jacqueline West are the two parents that have adopted the two boys, so they are the adoptive parents. And they actually had fostered the boys back in 2018 and then went through with an official adoption in 2019. Now, with this sad story unfolding, the fact that it takes place in the setting of California City is really interesting and kind of adds to the eeriness of it. California City is California's third largest city. Now, this place had high hopes of being like a big competitive city with Los Angeles back in the 1950s when it was, essentially founded. And it never made that goal. It never happened. And to this day, the place is like a ghost town. There's barren neighborhoods, it's out in the desert, there's paved roads that lead to nowhere. And watching reporters interview people, talk to people, outside the home, there is like this desolate desert vibe to it. Now that brings us to the first thing we're going to talk about with this, and that is the TV interview that the adoptive parents gave. Now, I watched two versions of it. First, I watched like the edited for news type thing, and there were some things in there that I was like, what's up with that? But then I watched the unedited, like 14, 15 minute video, the whole thing of them, and I was like, oh my god. So in this video, the two have come out of the home. This is like their first real, we're talking to the public type situation, face to face or on camera, whatever you want to call it. They're both wearing masks. I'm not sure if it's for social distancing or simply to hide their faces. So the wife starts off, she's thanking everybody, for searching, all that kind of stuff, and she's swaying back and forth. Now, I'm going to also be going over just some things, that I saw with this that I was like, what? Like, why'd they say that? Why'd they do that? And that was one of them. She had this very weird body language. Now, the husband is sitting there, arms folded, looking down, very defensive is a good word that I would say. Now, do they have reason to be defensive that doesn't revolve around them having done something to these boys? I don't know. But first watch, I was like, this is really odd, their behavior. But again, how would I feel in that situation? I don't know. I can't say. So let's keep dissecting this interview. So the reporter starts right off and they're like, tell us what happened. And this is where any bit of let me give them a chance to see what they have to say started going down the drain. Because almost immediately, both of them, especially the husband, they're kind of like, okay. And I was like, do they know they just did that? They just sucked in air and sighed like, oh my God, I can't believe we have to tell this story again. And then the wife kind of just spits out this random from our yard, and I'm like, is she okay? Why did she just randomly say that before they even get talking about it? So the father begins to tell us a story. Now he says, look, you know what? It was it was getting dark. It was around 5-ish, a little bit before, and he had gone into the backyard. Now he also makes note. He's like, you know what? The wife was inside wrapping presents, so we wanted to take the two young boys out. Kind of, he didn't say this, but to me, it made it sound like they didn't want them seeing the presents being wrapped or whatever. And he's like, we didn't want to play in the dirt, so we gave them some chalk to play on the patio. We wanted to keep them close. And he makes a point to say that, which again, I'm just like, why are you making a point to say that right now? So he says he was going to get firewood because it was going to get cold. And he's referring to the side gate and or the side fence, and there's a little gate there, and he was going over to this, very desolate looking, just kind of deserty spot next door to get said firewood. And so he starts talking, and at one point he says, he was like, I was throwing it over, and then he kind of keeps going, and he's like, and then I came in and I went inside and I saw the boys, they were there, and then I came out and they weren't there. And so let's pause there for a second. So now, first of all, I don't know what kind of firewood he was talking about. Maybe he's talking about just twigs, stuff like that. To me, I was thinking the kind of firewood that I have here, which is oaks chopped up, with a splitter. And so I was like, why would you throw that over the fence? Number one, when the gate's open, what if the kids had run around and come around and you're throwing the wood over over on them. And I thought it was weird that he kind of didn't finish that thought when he said that, but you know, I could just be being petty there. So at this point he's like, oh my God, where are the kids? Now he says, I started looking around, I looked out front, you know, da-da-da. And then he's like asking the wife, have you seen him? No, we looked in the house, yada yada yada. And he's like, so then I jumped in the van, and he's like, I hit every corner, I looked up and down the street, I hit every corner, you know, I even talked to a guy over on the street over there, and I was asking him, you know, have you seen two boys? And he hadn't seen them. Now clearly he doesn't find the boys on this little, you know, field trip to find them. And so he says he comes back home and he tells his wife, look, I need your help, call the cops, you know, da-da-da-da-da. Now he says the cops get there and they're basically like, look, y'all need to stay in the house. And this is where he starts kind of going this tangent about wanting to come out and search and all that kind of stuff. But the cops are like, you've got the best out there, y'all just stay in the house, you know, y'all need to be here, and yada yada yada. And he's also making mention, you know, we wanted to come out, we wanted to say thank you to everybody, yeah, but they wouldn't let us, we were being under order to stay in the house. So the fact that he, number one, makes it a point to say, look, this is why we didn't come out and search. We wanted to come out and thank you, but we weren't allowed. I understand in any of these situations, everyone's going to go after the parents and the people close, whatever it is. That's normal. It's procedure, whatever. When I start seeing somebody that's at the center of this start to say, well, that's why we couldn't come out, you know, and they're making that a point. And there's also this lack of, I don't know if panic's the right word, but there's something missing there. It starts to feel forced. So there's that. Now let's move on to some other aspects of it. So now at one point, the reporter is like, well, look, tell me again, like, what time did this happen at? And the dad's like, you know, like 4:30, it was getting ready to get dark. It was around that time. And so then the reporter's like, and how long did you search? The reporter's just trying to get them to say, from the point that they were missing, when did you call the cops? And they can't say. They avoid the question, and I can't tell if they're avoiding it, but they definitely never give a direct answer to it. There doesn't seem to be a definitive answer of, it felt like 15 minutes. You know, or, oh my God, you know, it felt like hours went by, but I guess it was only 20 minutes. There's just this avoidance of that. And so that right there, I was like, why aren't they narrowing that down? Now, also during this interview, there's a confrontation between biological family members of the boys and the adoptive parents. And so you hear this kind of going on off screen, and I think it's like the aunt and maybe just, I'm not sure how the relation to some of the other family members, but they're kind of calling them out. And she's mad. She's like, you were supposed to be watching after these, you know, why would you leave a child unattended? You know, why did two people have to go in the house? And, you know, just kind of calling this stuff out. And then one of the other dudes there is like, well, I've talked to neighbors that said y'all didn't even search. And the guy is saying, no, we wanted to, he said that. And eventually, I mean, it's becoming a confrontation. And my perspective of it is I watched that first. I had not watched the video we're going to talk about here in a minute that y'all told me to go and check out of the neighbors' camera footage that they have of the kind of neighborhood in the house. So watching this, I was like, you know, okay, you know, interesting. But that being said, you know, it disperses after a while and they kind of break it up, whatever. And they're like, look, you know, basically this is why we can't come out. You know, this is very heated and this is that. And so it's just this really bad situation. You know, the biological family's there. The biological mother has come to help look. Now, when they interview her, this is very interesting. She is very upset. She's crying. She's sad. There is an emotional reaction. You do not see an emotional reaction from the mother and the father, the adopted parents, at all. Period. End of story. The only reaction you see from them is like this anxiety, nervousness. Now, I have forgotten to mention this before. I'm just so like, I've gone on a binge today with this. I'm kind of just spewing out here for this video. I apologize. So one of the things that the mother is doing also is she's sitting there. Anytime the father talks, she's like, I mean, aggressively shaking her head yes. Not just every now and then like, yeah, I remember that. I mean, yep, that happened exactly that way. That's what happened. You know, she doesn't say that, but I mean, that's just how intense she was about it. And I was like, wow, she's being like so extra with that. And like I said before, the dad the whole time is just, you know, and so both their body language does not pass the vibe check. So back to the biological mother. Now, nobody's ever made light, and that's, whatever situation happened that made her lose her children. She does say, you know what? I've been trying to get my life back together. I want to be able to get my kids back, yada, yada, yada. And so there's that. And she blames these two people for what happened to the kids. She's like, you know what? I feel like they did something. I feel like my babies are here, which I think is interesting. Now, another thing that's interesting is when the reporter is talking to the father, and they're like, well, what do you think happened? What do you think? What do you think? And so he says, I think that the boys are here in this neighborhood, and I really wish we could go look in people's houses. Now, I thought that was so interesting. Again, have I ever been in his shoes? No. I would think if someone had asked me, now that would have gone through my mind. I'll say that. That would have gone through my mind. If someone had asked me that, I don't think I would have been so sure like this guy was. Someone in the neighborhood took him. We need to look in everybody's houses. That part, I'm just like, there's two things here. Either he really doesn't trust some of those neighbors, or he's also trying to be like, I think he's here. Let's keep the search here, when they know that something else is going on over here. Now, also, the couple had lived in Bakersfield before they bought this home there in California City. And so they had lived there, with all these 6 children, and they moved to California City. So they had also allegedly gone shopping in Bakersfield days before. And so this brought the search party because the community came together over this. I mean, instantly they came together. And so people were like, let's go search in Bakersfield. Let's trace this back. And so good on them for doing that because, I just think that those boys might not be right in that area. I am questioning if they ever made it to the home at this point. Now, almost immediately, the police and the FBI are involved. Tuesday at 6 p.m., the police serve a search warrant on the home. They are seen taking evidence bags out. They tow the van away. Now, in the interview, the husband and wife are questioning, what they take, and the husband says they took technology. He's like, basically our phones. And so there's that. Now, as of this recording, we haven't heard anything back yet of what they might have or found or whatever. Now, California City Police also say, we talked to all the neighbors. Nobody's seen the boys. So we're just canvassing the neighborhood. We're checking this out. Nobody's seen these boys. They even dug up places in the backyard. Now, the police did say, they're being totally cooperative. They've come in on their own. They've answered questions. They have not been putting up any stops to any of our investigation. Now, the adoptive parents did end up issuing a statement, like a family statement type situation. And I'm just going to read a very quick blurb of it. In less than 24 hours of the disappearance of the boys, our extended family started receiving threats of physical violence, including death threats. Family members who live thousands of miles away also received these same threats. We were advised appropriately to avoid public spaces and crowds given the immediacy and intensity of these threats. Again, it just feels very weird that the parents are very concerned about trying to keep up this image of, look, this is why we're doing this. We don't want y'all to think this. It just seems like the last thing that one might be worried about during this time. Now, all that being said, we're going to take a sofa sidebar here in a minute and talk about some of my, well, what if this and what if that? But before we get to that, we need to go over the video that y'all told me to go and check out, because when I watched this, I was like, it's done. It's a wrap. This blows their story out of the water. Now, there is going to be a link in the description. The YouTube channel is called AV Watchman. Like I said, I'm going to direct link the video down there. He has a timestamp that starts off to where this takes place. Now, what the video is, it's this gentleman who has gone to one of the neighbors' homes. Now, this neighbor has security cameras, very similar to the Watts situation. And this neighbor has invited this guy into his home, and he's like, look, you know what? This is what the parents were saying. This is what happened at 4:30 and this time and this time. Well, we're going to look at the video and see how the stories match up. And sadly, as you can imagine, they don't match up. Now, at the time that the father says he's allegedly searching for the boys, so this happens, he's running around, he's doing this, he's doing that. So he shows us the video footage, and what we see is the porch light come on. The father walks out the front door, he goes to the van, and it's almost like he opens a side door or something. And a moment later, the van turns on, and then, maybe a minute later, the van pulls off. Now, things to note during this part are this. There is no sense of urgency. There is no running and looking around the yard or anything like that. This is a father gingerly walking out and getting in the van and turning it on and hanging tight for a second and then pulling out. So we see the father pull out and he takes the left out of the driveway and then takes his first right and is, allegedly going. Again, he's not rushing. He's not doing anything you would think he would be doing. If it's getting dark and there's all these like open desert areas, I would want to see my my headlights pointing in this direction. Well, he doesn't do that. He just casually goes around the corner and then he goes out of view. Now, about 4 to 5 minutes later, you see the van. It comes back from a different direction. It comes back and it parks. The door opens. The father gets out and he walks to like this little tree that's kind of there at the drive. And this is where he stays. There's not any kind of urgency. There's none of this panic that he's talking about. There's none of that going on. Now, the neighbor with the cam says, it's during this time that he thinks that the police have been called. And so essentially the father's just like out there waiting, not really doing anything. Now, also with this, you can see the backyard. You can kind of see through the fence. You see the dog moving. So you can tell that there's nobody out there searching. There's nothing going on. There's just nothing going on. It's just people waiting for the police to show up. So eventually, a few minutes later, the cop pulls up. There's some interaction there at the car, whatever. Cop pulls off, and then the father gets back in the van. Now, what's interesting also, and the guy in the video, the neighbor points this out, is he's like, look at the cops. They are like frantically kind of looking around with their cars the way you would think you would do. This guy casually pulls out, takes the same route that he did before. So it's so weird to see this. And again, this timing is all in that 4:30, 5 o'clock zone. Now, another thing that was so telling about this video, about the footage from the neighbors, is the neighbor's like, look, we can roll this video back. And so he takes it back to December 19th. Now, this is the day that the parents said they took the children to Bakersfield to go Christmas shopping. And sure enough, it's daylight, and he's showing where the van's parked. And basically, this neighbor says, look, only 4 kids get into this van. And, while it is blurry, you can tell, like, yeah, there's, okay, where's the other 2? So the parents leave, later on they come back, and just the parents get out. So there's no kids at all. So during the interview that the couple gave, they had said, what, our other 4 children were out on vacation. They were with their grandmothers. When asked why the 2 youngest boys didn't go, they were like, they're too young to go, to vacation, whatever. So there was that. So there is this question of, well, maybe that's when they drop these kids off. That would make sense. But then also it tells us this, well, where are the other 2? Where are they at? Now, when this YouTuber is asking the neighbor, like, well, did you see the kids? That's the next obvious question. Did you see the kids walk off? And he's like, I never saw the kids. He's like, I never saw these people. Like, they were never out there like that. These kids weren't out playing. They weren't out doing that kind of stuff. So that's very interesting. So remember back when I said that during that interview that the family members of the children, the biological family, was there, and they're like, well, we talked to neighbors that said you weren't searching and da-da-da-da. Here you go. Okay, here's said neighbor. So it's very damning in my opinion. Now, another thing that you see that would be obvious to me is, okay, you have this video. I mean, it's all out there, round the clock. So where are the kids wandering off from the house? Where is the kidnapper who's been sitting by the house, waiting to snatch the children up? None of that's going on. There's just no sign of these boys. And now, with that being said, let's take a sofa sidebar here for a second. We're going to go down allegedly street. Okay. So let's go with a couple of things here. Let's pretend for a second that what the parents are saying is 100% true. Okay, let's go with their thing. So they're in the house, they're doing this, he left the gate open, I come in, the boys have wandered off. So again, if you look at, I'm going to put some pictures up here of like the Google Maps of what their place looks like, and you can see it in the interviews. Now, these might not be completely recent, so this is just an example of what this area is like, but there is these large lots next to the home. So my thought process is, number one, okay, well, how long did you go in the house? Because those 2 young little boys would have had to have gotten pretty far, in my opinion, to have gotten that far away from the house that you can't run into them. Even though this is a desolate area, there's lots of houses right in that little cluster. So unless maybe some people weren't home or whatever, I find that to be really odd. So let's say the boys have toddled off. Let's say, they might be on the street. Well, the father goes one way. He's not in a rush. He's not shining the lights in the open lots or whatever. Luckily we now have this video to compare the story. So the only other thing would be, like, if we didn't have this video to be able to tell that it doesn't look like anything happened, would be, okay, then someone snatched them. Because remember, the dad's saying that he thinks the kids are in the neighborhood, that somebody snatched them up. Well, I would think then that you would see that. You would see something taking place. A car waiting for them. A person maybe on the street that saw them and grabbed them up. Something. But again, with this video, there's just nothing there. And also, this area is so flat. It's so desolate. It's not like there's trees to hide behind or, anything like that. Now, again, this brings me back to my whole thing of, I don't know if the kids ever made it to that house. I think it's a good thing that they are searching other areas besides that, because we're seeing evidence and hearing evidence. It just sounds like, nobody's really seen these kids. Nobody's seen these two boys. And so it's very odd that, there's just no sign of them. And that on top of that, we now have, it's not been confirmed by, like, the police, like, yes, we, went over the video and with the fine-tooth comb, and this is 100% what it shows. But I mean, you can watch it and you'll see. I mean, it's like, where are the boys? Now, again, that behavior that we see with the parents, the defensive body language, the rehearsed story, because once again, when you watch that interview, and there's a link down to it below, where the dad just, okay, and you're just like, oh my God, is that like one of those things slipping out of the truth slipping out? Now, there is at this point a $50,000 reward, for anything leading to finding these poor little boys. Now, down below in the description, I'm going to put, places you can contact if you have any information, if you are out in that area, whatever, you can check it out and see what's going on. Hopefully, we're all wrong here, you know what I'm saying? And like, this energy that we're getting off these parents is incorrect, and the boys wandered off and they're going to come back and yada yada. Sadly, so many times when we see these things, it ends up being the caretakers, and so many times when we see these things, these caretakers do not have a problem lying through their teeth, and again, I don't want to 100% say I'm not there, I haven't seen this, I don't know these people. I can only go on what I can see, and what I'm seeing is they're telling us one story, and the evidence that we're seeing so far, is not matching those two stories. So anyways, that's it. I appreciate you watching. I am dying to hear what y'all think in the comment section. So my God, leave a comment. Let me know what your theory is on this. We're going to stay tuned. Again, hit those phone numbers up for the local police there if you know anything about this to bring these two little boys home. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Thank you to all the Patreons, the channel members, the subs, the Sofa Squad. You make this channel possible, to mods. I really appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later.